We will now go to consent calendar. Marina?
All right, consent calendar. Number 1, administration motion, waive reading of ordinances and resolutions. 2, administration motion, approve minutes for the City Council meeting of August 16th, 2011. 3, planning motion, accept planning director issued permits for the period of August 1st, 2011 through August 31st, 2011. 4, administration resolution, response to grand jury report running on empty. Number 5, administration resolution, response to grand jury report, county officials need to make noise about aircraft noise. 6, administration resolution, resolutions adopting OPEB trust asset allocation. Number 2, OPEB trust investment policy. 7, Public Works Resolution, request for allocation of Transportation Development Act Article 3 TDA funds for the Highway 1 trail improvements from Seymour Street to Wavecrest Road. And number 8, Administration Resolution, second extension agreement to settlement agreement and release, Leonard P. Booth Trust et al.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Mueller?
Yes.
Councilmember Qualcheck?
Yes.
Councilmember Fraser?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Alfano?
Yes.
Mayor Packridge?
Yes. We will now move on to item number 8, ordinance adding chapter 7.40, heritage trees, repealing chapter 12.16, designation of heritage trees and trimming and removal of heritage trees, and amending section 17.40.120, trees of Title 17 subdivisions of the Half Moon Bay Municipal Code.
Thank you, Mayor Packridge. This evening we are continuing, 1, with our code cleanup, and 2, with trying to make sure we do protect the environment here in Half Moon Bay. And so this evening, our city attorney, Tony Kandati, will give his usual fabulously brief introduction.
Thank you, Mayor Packridge, members of the City Council. As Laura said, this is another in our ongoing efforts to update the code to eliminate inconsistent, duplicative, unnecessary language, but also to strengthen the code as a tool for city staff in our ongoing efforts to make or to protect the public and enhance the public health, safety, and welfare. Tonight, we turn our attention to the city's heritage tree regulations. Currently, as the ordinance indicates, we have a heritage tree protection ordinance. It's contained in chapter 12.16 of the existing municipal code. Title 12 of the code is entitled Public Improvements, and inasmuch as the existing code regulates removal of heritage trees on both public and private property, the first change proposed is to relocate this to Title 7, which is more appropriately entitled Health and Welfare. The second change that I'll touch upon is to eliminate unnecessary definitions that are contained in the existing code. Currently, the code defines terms that are really commonly understood in the ordinary language to have fairly clear meanings, such as the term pruning, the term drip line, and what constitutes tree removal are all defined terms in the municipal code in our efforts to clarify and simplify the regulations. We're proposing to delete those. At the same time, the existing definition of what constitutes a heritage tree in the existing code is really, in my view, almost so vague as to be of very little use to a person who reads the current definition and wants to know if a tree that they're thinking about having removed would constitute a heritage tree. As amended, the definition of what constitutes a heritage tree is clearly spelled out as a tree that is at least 12 inches in diameter or 38 inches circumference at a height of 48 inches above ground level, or a tree that's been designated as such by the City Council because of its unique or valuable characteristics. The requirement that a permit be obtained before a heritage tree is either removed or major pruning occurs on a tree that's classified as a heritage tree is carried over and, in my view, strengthened in the proposed ordinance. One of the changes that you see in the new language, however, is that the existing code has really redundant provisions that deal with removal of a tree on public property or removal of a tree on private property. We've combined those into one, and the same regulations would apply when a person seeks to remove for instance, a street tree located in the public right-of-way as a tree that's all the way in the yard. I would add that the same regulations would apply to the city if, for whatever reason, there's a need to remove an existing heritage tree that the city is undertaking. Neither the old version of the heritage tree ordinance nor the proposed amounts to a flat-out prohibition on removal of trees that might be characterized as heritage trees. There are a number of factors that would go into a decision on an application for a permit to remove or conduct major pruning on a heritage tree, including the condition of the tree, the necessity of the removal to construct other improvements or to enjoy the use of the property, whether the removal would cause some sort of a harm, such as a risk of erosion in the area, proximity to a creek where that might be problematic would be a factor, and the significance of the tree in terms of its size, location, and any historic or scenic value that the tree has to the community. And of course, the availability of reasonable and feasible alternatives. In the case where a permit is issued, then in order to obtain a permit, the permittee would be required to replace any tree that's removed on a one-for-one basis with a tree of a minimum size of 24 inches or a 24-inch box tree. And it would have to go on a location that's approved by the city. One of the things that is proposed for deletion from the proposed ordinance is the current requirement that in connection with any application for a tree removal permit, the applicant must obtain an opinion from a licensed arborist on the condition of the tree. One of the factors that may go into the either granting or denial of a tree removal permit is, of course, whether or not the tree is diseased or dying or at the end of its life. The proposed ordinance wouldn't prohibit the city from requiring an arborist, but it doesn't require it. And the reason is very simple. This type of a provision is common in ordinances that are much more restrictive in terms of how, what the standards are for removal. In some cities, for instance, the health of the tree is, or whether or not the tree is endangering, say if it may fall on a residence or something like that, is the only factor that is considered. And if it's not, either a risk of physical damage or injury or already in a condition of dying or nearing the end of its life, then the arborist's opinion would be critical. But since this ordinance takes into consideration a number of factors, it's simply an undue burden to require an arborist's opinion in every instance. Another change that is really consistent with actions the council's already taken with regard to the ARC and the Parks and Rec Commission is to remove the Tree Advisory Committee as a committee created by ordinance of the City Council. Again, the Advisory Committee status wouldn't change because of this, but it's really felt that it's not a necessary component of the municipal code to mandate the establishment of the committee. Lastly, the existing municipal code provision declares that a violation of the heritage tree ordinance is a citation that can be prosecuted as a misdemeanor. That is carried over into the new ordinance, but additional civil remedies are available. I think in some instances there may be real drawbacks to having to prosecute tree violations as crimes that could include the possibility of jail time. So providing civil remedies gives us an additional tool, and quite frankly, what I consider to be a more effective tool to deal with violations. I'm happy to respond to any questions or council member comments at this time.
I'd also like to add one of the key provisions that was absent in the current code. The changes that we're recommending include requiring replacement of a new tree if a permit is granted to take down an existing tree.
Glad to see that was in. Are there any comments or questions from council? I have no blue cards. Rick?
Yeah, just a question like that. I was unfamiliar with this. So we're removing the tree advisory committee. And what would the responsibilities of such a committee be? Like, what is going away?
Under the prior permit scheme, the tree advisory committee would weigh in on any tree removal applications. Under the proposed, that would be a staff level determination in the first instance, subject to appeal to the city council if a permit is either denied or granted and an interested person wants to appeal it.
Great, thank you. So totally comfortable with this because that seems unnecessary.
Okay, John, want to make the motion?
Well, I think it says it best here. We're not anti-tree by any stretch of the imagination, but this is a continued effort, as the city manager mentioned, to clean up these inconsistent policies that's been in place for a few years. And so I'm really happy to see that we're keeping it simple. It looks complex, but this does simplify it a lot more. And so we do know when a tree is bad, an expert will tell you to remove it. And if you remove a tree, then you put another one back in. Simple as that, but what meets the standards, correct? And I think this is just a great start or continuation of what we've all been trying to do the last few years on the council, is to clean up some of these messes.
That's right, and the purpose behind this type of an ordinance is to preserve really what are community assets, but also to enhance and encourage the planting of trees, which are all good for the environment, good for the scenic resources of the community. And so, in my view, this is a better, more effective way of encouraging what I think we all agree is a worthwhile effort.
I'll make a motion. Consider introduction of ordinance number C-11-11, updating and recodifying the City of Half Moon Bay's ordinance designating and regulating the removal, major pruning, and replacement of the city's heritage trees.
Is there a second?
Second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any objections to unanimous roll call?
Pardon me, before you take your vote, I assume that the recommended action is to introduce the ordinance.
Yes, I think that's what we're doing. Yeah.
To consider introduction. I read the recommendation from the staff report. Did I not?
We're not considering it.
We're not considering. We
Yeah.
are introducing.
You are introducing.
We are introducing the ordinance.
Seriously considering.
Seriously considering. But we are introducing the ordinance this evening. Thank you.
Okay, is there any objections to unanimous roll call?
I think our city attorney.
Oh.
No, I appreciate your pointing that out, and I'll correct that on the next ordinance.
You were trying to pass the buck there for a while.
Okay, all right.
I was not doing it impromptu.
Oh, it's so nice to see us all have a little bit of comedy and fun up here. Are we able to say that anyone objects to unanimous roll call now? Okay, all right. Is there any objections to unanimous roll call? Hearing none, we will now go to item 10.